And welcome to the Frogs War Podcast, Episode 7, being recorded here on Wednesday, December the 19th. Happy to be back. It's been a little bit of a break here. Podcast has been on hiatus for a little while. Some things have changed at Frogs of War. Certainly we have a new look. We've got some new blood who we'll be introducing here in just a little bit. And certainly the one big thing that I think has happened between podcasts is we had a football season. And there's a lot to talk about. A lot of things happened. Lots of things to reminisce about and look back, and then also look forward, which is always the fun thing. Look ahead to see what's going to be happening over the next 6 months to a year. So let's go ahead and dive right in. First of all, I need to introduce the gentleman with me tonight. First off, Mr. Angry Trey Fallon. Trey, how are you doing this evening?
I am terrific, gentlemen. How are y'all doing?
Doing all right. And also joining me tonight for the first time on the podcast, the new guy here at Frogs of War, but certainly we've been ecstatic about the work he's been doing. He's doing a great job. Mr. Jamie Plunkett of the Dallas Sports Rant, now also a Frogs of War, and we're happy to have him. Jamie, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well, fellas. How are y'all?
Doing good. And as always, Patrick McCullough, Mr. Fungo Frog here, your host, guiding the ship as we do. And we'll go ahead and dive in. I think we really do just have to start with football. Why not, right? Just got done with the 2012 season, the inaugural season for TCU football in the Big 12. I think going into the season, we had really high hopes, right? And as it went through towards the middle or so, we had our hopes dashed, and we'll dive into that. And now as we finish out, we've got one game left, the bowl game against Michigan State. I feel like TCU fans are kind of cautiously happy about the way this year went and looking forward. And I feel like there's some cautious optimism, not anything ecstatic, but, I think people are feeling okay. But let's go ahead and take a look back and just have the guys, we'll just go around the table and just each talk about the thing that we thought was the favorite memory of the season, reminiscing about what happened. And Trey, I'll go ahead and start with you. As you look back across this 2012 season, what was the favorite memory, the thing that's sticking out to you that you'll always remember about our first season in the Big 12?
Yeah, well, I was kind of looking back at the season today, and something that kind of surprised me was just the fact that you have this team who I will say was average this season, and not because necessarily the players, but as we all know, they had a ton of injuries. And when I look back, it's like, for having a team that was so young and had so many injuries, every game was almost exciting or had its exciting moments. But if I just have to, go with a couple here, I would say by far to me, the most exciting game and just all around moment of the season was beating Texas. I think that kind of justified the season for TCU. They're the big brother of the state, and when you can go down there and beat them in their own house, it's just, to me, it's a great moment. And I think the West Virginia game, you go back and look at just the exciting plays that took place during that game, whether it's Boyce's 94-yard touchdown or the reverse pass in overtime to tie it up, or the block field goal, or going for two. It's like that game is just like, oh my gosh. And it was kind of a roller coaster of a game. And I kind of think that, speaks to the type of season TCU had, because it was kind of a roller coaster of a season. There was lots of highs and lots of lows.
Absolutely, and we'll talk about some of the lows as well as some of the highs as we go forward here. Jamie, I want to give you a chance, though, looking back across the 2012 season, your favorite memory, the thing that stuck out for you as far as just the really fun and momentous occasions, is the best part of 2012.
I have to agree with Trey for the most part. Beating Texas and being there in person to watch us beat the Longhorns in Austin on Thanksgiving, it really solidified, I think, in a lot of people's minds across the country the fact that despite the injuries, despite that little boy view that many people have about TCU, it really proved that we belong. Same with the West Virginia game, all of the trick plays and the late comeback and the 2-point conversion that came into that. I was screaming obscenities at my television that whole time. But for me, the number one win of the season was the beat down that we laid on Baylor and Waco. I was very disappointed in the team's performance there last year, even though Paul, it was his first start. And so just to come back against a team that I absolutely despise and just lay the wood to them in their own house, it was a great feeling. but yeah, coming into this season, if you had told me that we would lose 24 players, key players on both sides of the ball, and that we would still go 7-5 in our first season in the Big 12, I would have to come away pretty pleased with that.
The big thing. I mean, as far as good memories go, the thing that always I think will stick with me is Texas. And it's not just the win. It's not just the fact that we won on Thanksgiving, the big night game. It's not just the fact that we won in Austin. It's that it's so funny if you look about what's been happening with the program at Texas, that loss set in motion just this avalanche of hatred in Austin. And this, I mean, people were already pretty fed up with Mac Brown and the whole program and the way it was going, but that loss to TCU just totally pushed them off the cliff, and I am so proud of that. I am so proud that we were the team, not Oklahoma. Like losing to Oklahoma, they were just like, well, whatever. We always lose to Oklahoma. But then they lose to TCU, and it was epically horrible. And sure, yeah, I mean, maybe they shouldn't be so surprised. We are the better program, of course, right now. But either way, that to me was just the greatest thing. Obviously, the West Virginia game was probably the most exciting one. Going to West Virginia, the late comeback that was really improbable with that Josh Boyce freak 92-yard catch and run,
94,
whatever, yeah. 90 plus, just insane. And then of course the 2-point conversion in overtime, which is becoming a staple of Gary Patterson. There's a lot of good. There's a lot of good to remember, but there is a lot of bad. Trey, I'd hate to have to do this to you, but Jamie mentioned it, 24-ish players that we lost, whether it was injury, behavior, DUI, whatever it may be. Talk about the low. Talk about the thing that happened this season, whether it was losing Casey Paul Hall or a specific game or a play, whatever it was, that you'll also never lose in your mind, and you'll always think back to say, what if?
I mean, I feel like kind of the given in this situation is the Casey Paul Hall situation. I remember, the morning you get online and you see, oh my God, Casey Paul Hall has been arrested for DUI. That's the last thing, that we needed to happen for the program right now, especially, with, him living with Tanner Brock and all the things that went on earlier. So I kind of think that's like the default bad memory, and I definitely will never forget that moment of this season. But to me, there's two other things, and one of them kind of ties into that. I just think losing to Iowa State that week was probably the lowest point of the season, in my opinion. Just you lose your starting quarterback, then you lose to a team at home that you probably should beat. And I think if TCU played Iowa State later in the season, TCU probably beats them. So that was a low that kind of tied in the Paul Hall thing. And then outside of that whole situation, I thought losing Wayman James was a killer. He started off the season so well. I know the first two opponents weren't world beaters, but he was averaging around 9 yards per carry early on this season. And I think if this TCU offense could have had him with Boykin, it could have taken some of the pressure off, because with Matthew Tucker being banged up and Catalon having fumbling problems early on and Andre Dean just kind of not really ever getting it together, I think if you would have had Wayman James, it kind of would have helped the offense a little bit. So Hall, Wayman James, those are probably the two low points for me this season.
On real quick here, one thing that I've thought since I've been watching a lot of Michigan State tape recently, and we'll have a preview series coming up for Michigan State, by the way, and you'll be able to watch some tape from Michigan State's, a couple of different Michigan State games on Frogs of War for free. So keep an eye on Frogs of War for that coming up in the next week or so. But the one thing that I was thinking as I was watching that film is, if Andre Dean had been the starting running back at Michigan State this year, he might have 1,600 yards and 20 touchdowns. I've always thought the biggest thing for Dean was the way his body and running style were built. He was never going to be a truly successful running back at TCU because our system does not fit his style. This system is much more of an Ed Wesley, B.J. Catalon type of running back system, and Wayman James is kind of a hybrid that manages to kind of make it work. But Dean is just not the kind of guy that's ever going to gain yards running laterally. He has to be pounding it up the middle behind a strong offensive line, and just watching Michigan State and the running back they have there, I could see Dean fitting in there. And it's, you have to wonder if obviously he wanted to come back closer to home when he transferred over from UCLA. He's a parade All-American going out to UCLA. What would have happened if he'd stayed out there, maybe even transferred to USC? His career might be looking quite differently for now. Otherwise, for now, I guess he's going to be a rap star instead of a football player. But, you might be headed to the NFL if he hadn't decided to head to TCU. But water under the bridge, whatever it may be. Jamie, to you, we're doing a little best and worst here. What was the worst point of the season for you? And Trey took Casey Paul Hall and Iowa State off the table, so you got to go something new.
Well, if that's the case, then I'm going to have to go with the game in Stillwater against Oklahoma State. That really, for me, felt like it was a huge turning point in the season. Honestly, after that game, I think we lost 36-14. Went into the half with a 14-9 lead and just came out completely out of gas in the second half of that game. If you had asked me what we would have done after that game, going through the rest of the season, I would have told you with 100% conviction that we were not going to win another game. Looking at the back end of that schedule with Texas and Kansas State and Oklahoma left, and West Virginia still at that point, I could not see that team with an injured Boykin, an offensive line that couldn't block to save their lives, a defensive secondary that looked exhausted, Mapanga not 100%. That for me felt like the breaking point in this season where we were really starting to seriously question whether or not we were going to even make a bowl game.
It's funny because if you're listening to this podcast on Frogs War, you follow it. You saw the Oklahoma State relook the other day. If I went back and watched a little bit of that tape today, and I decided I didn't want to work at work, and that game truly was heartbreaking. The Oklahoma State offense was so inept in the first half. Either that or our defense was so good in the first half, and in the second half, the tables turned so drastically, right? Everything went from going right to going wrong. And part of me wants to credit Mike Gundy. Or is it Mike Gundy? Oklahoma State? Gundy. Mm-hmm. Old man, 40. To credit him for making the good adjustments. And obviously he's a great coach. But the other part of me thinks that it was one of those times where you've got the really young team and they're doing really well on the road in the first half, and then they just let it go. And I think, was it Wes Lunt was the quarterback for that game for Oklahoma State? Was he?
Yes, I believe so. I think.
One of the 7 they used this year. Who knows?
It amazes me that they can have 4 quarterbacks that are young and they all can apparently play. What's going on?
Right. I mean, it's kind of the proliferation of the college system, right? College coaches design a system that'll work for the quarterback, right? And so you can just plug the guy in and it works. And Mike Gundy only recruits quarterbacks that will work specifically in his system. He knows exactly the mold that he wants, and he goes out and he gets it, right? And we're seeing that with Brandon Wheaton right now in Cleveland, right? The guy is not necessarily, going to go out and be an NFL MVP, and he just was, I think, fairly overrated. But you see the same thing with Oklahoma State. You've got the 4th-string quarterback who could still put up good numbers. It's within the system. It's frustrating.
Oh,
yeah, and
absolutely.
It was Wes Lunt. Sorry, I just checked. It was Wes Lunt.
Yeah.
Very cool. And that system quarterback thing is not new, though. I mean, if you look at Mike Leach's teams at Texas Tech when he was still there, you had guys like Graham Harrell throwing for over 4,000 yards in the season, and now he's warming the bench for Green Bay. Or you have all of those quarterbacks under June Jones in Hawaii that were breaking passing records left and right. And so it is interesting, but hey, for college it works. So you've got to credit the guy for going out and finding the right arms for the system. But really the thing that turned the tables in that game specifically against Oklahoma State was their running back, Randall. In the first half, he was being shut down at the line. And in the second half, the linebackers got tired, the D-line got tired, and the secondary was trying to get up to stop him in the box, and he was gaining 5 yards a carry. And so you load the box with 8, and then they throw over the top, and it just went all downhill very quickly.
I'd have to say my low point in the season, well, obviously, you have to say it's Iowa State, but I can't go there. After the Iowa State game, though, my whole attitude to the season was just whatever good happens, I'll take it. And my expectations went from this is a 10 to 11 win team that, with a bowl win, obviously, that maybe could challenge for the Big 12 title, to I don't care how good you think Trevon Boykin is, this is just not going to work right now. As a freshman quarterback, there's no way we're going to make it through this whole slate without dropping a bunch of games. For me, this is going to sound crazy, and maybe I am crazy. I'm going to go with the Kansas game. The reason I went with the Kansas game is I was at the Kansas game. Just obviously, people who know I was here living in Kansas at the time. I went to the game. Number one, ugly ass stadium, horrible. I mean, the thing's like a concrete jail cell. Number two, TCU really played awfully, and Wayman James tore his ACL. So many bad things. I mean, that's the game that we should have won by like 70. We should have absolutely dominated. We should have had Wayman James the rest of the year as a potential Doak Walker Award finalist, and it just all went wrong. Now we won the game, right? And if we had lost, I mean, I would have just packed it up for the rest of the year. We won the game, but watching that game in person was just awful. And I made it to Grambling State, Kansas, and Texas this year. Or I did make it to Texas. I was supposed to go to Texas. I didn't make it to Texas, but I was in Austin at the time. Out of my 2 games, I got to see Grambling as a beatdown, and I saw Kansas as a pretty pathetic showing, which was unfortunate. But either way, that's our best and worst. Let's do a little report card. Starting with you, Trey. Go ahead and assign a letter grade to the basic parts of this team: offense, defense, special teams, and overall. What's your basic report card for TCU football as we finish out 2012?
With the offense, I will go with a C+, just because I thought the offensive line was really inconsistent this season. The running backs were, I would say, okay. I mean, I really like B.J. Catalon, but I think, he still has a little bit of work to do. Big Matthew Tucker fan, but he was obviously beat up. And I mean, I love our receivers, but I don't think they got to showcase their talents enough this season because of the quarterback situation. And, Boykin, I like him, and I like him going forward in the future, but he's just not quite there yet. So I'll go with C+ for the offense. I'll go with A for the defense, just because I think they played great, especially as the season went on. I really, really like the defensive line with Fields, Maponga, and I thought Chucky Hunter played really well in the middle all season long. And obviously the secondary with Verrett and those guys was leading the Big 12 in interceptions this season. So I give them an A, and just throw in. Do you want me to do special teams too? If so, I'll give special teams a B- because Oberkrom kind of lost his confidence late in the season. Sky Dawson worries me every time he has to catch a punt, and I guess the kick returners were okay at times, but so that's what I'll go with special teams in. Just to throw in coaching as well, I think you obviously have to give Gary Patterson an A+, or as high as A++, as high as you can give him, because of the job he did. And overall, just, for the season, I'll say a B. I think, it was decent. I think they're, an average to above average team with the youth that they have. So that's what I'm going to go with. Not a bad report card, just, work. There's work for room for improvement.
In my mind, this was probably going to be an 11-1 team in the Mountain West. To say that's an 8-5 team in the Big 12 if we win the bowl game, I'll take that. That's. I feel like that's probably where we should be with the quarterback situation and everything. But I won't get ahead of myself. Jamie, your report card for 2012.
Yeah. I got to give a little bit more credit to the offense than you, Trey, just because of the attrition that they've suffered this year with losing not only Wayman James, but everybody forgets about Ed Wesley too. We were expecting him to come back until he left for the NFL very, very late in the year for someone to do that. So I gave them a B-. I gave them a B-. The offensive line was young, and yes, they struggled. Boykin was thrown into the fire, and he struggled mightily against Iowa State. But you have to admit that there was a very, very distinct improvement with him as he progressed throughout the season. He even said earlier this week that from the Iowa State game to the Oklahoma game, it seemed to slow down, and you could tell that he was a lot more comfortable in the pocket those last few games. As far as the defense goes, I've got to give him an A+. I think they were the best defense in the Big 12, top 5 defenses in the country, and that has a lot to do with the turnovers they forced. They forced 32 turnovers on the season, tied with Kansas State for the most in the Big 12. You have a freshman like Devontae Fields coming in and just lighting it up. That dude is all world. You've got Verrett back there, and a guy that not a lot of people are talking about, Chris Hackett, true freshman, comes in, plays safety, 5th on the team in tackles, very, very good in coverage, very, very good against the run. He's going to be a player to watch for the next few years to come. As far as special teams goes, I give him a B+, and that's because Ethan Perry, freshman punter, I thought he had a relatively decent year, especially when it came up big in the Texas game when we were punting in the fourth quarter right before McCoy threw that pick to end the game. I think he punted like a 58-yard punt. You talk about Oberkrom, he's a freshman as well. He did waver there for a little bit near the end of the season, missed a few kicks that he should have made. But again, he came up big in the clutch, kicking that field goal. I think it was like a 45-yarder against Texas Tech to force overtime. And yeah, Sky, you always just kind of cross your fingers and pray when the ball is in the air hanging above his head. But I was also very impressed by Deontay Gray when he had the few opportunities to get back there and do a little bit. He returned that punt against Grambling State for a touchdown. So I'll go B+ with the special teams. As far as coaching staff goes, obviously Gary gets an A+. Like you said, Trey, whatever the highest grade he can get, I think he deserves, especially on defense. Same goes with Dick Bumpus. As far as play calling, our offensive coordinators, I would give them a C, but understanding that they had a lot of adjustments to make on the fly with Boykin being a completely different quarterback style than Paul Hall. So yeah, a little bit better grades in most of the areas than you, Trey, but I think we're on the same page. There's a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah, it's all good stuff that I'm hearing right now. Yeah, for me, I try to make it a little bit more simpler in my mind to try to wrap around the season because so much happened around the team. There's so many variables at play. It's almost like if you're thinking about when you're going through college and you're thinking about the grades that you get, this is like if you missed 2 months of the season or 2 months of the school year with mono, right? There's so many different variables at play. The grade that you got in the end was not necessarily representative of your total potential and what maybe you should have gotten. But offense, I feel like I have to go with a B-. The reason I say that is you always have to be ready to step up and play. And at times guys did that, especially at quarterback and at running back. You had flashes of greatness, but you also had some really bad moments where Trevon Boykin looked really lost and was just throwing the ball up in the air. You had the horrible game by B.J. Catalon where I think he fumbled 3 times and twice of them were like back-to-back series. Or 2 of the 3 times were back-to-back series. And I lump in the offensive coordinator with that offensive grade. I think Jared Anderson proved this year 2 things. Number one, he's far too conservative of a play caller. Forget who's on the field, far too conservative of a play caller. And number 2, just like the players have to adjust to what's happening, guys haven't, dropping out, having to step up. The coaching staff has to step up too, and I don't think they did. Even if you go back to the Grambling State game, the Kansas game, the SMU game, and watch that film, the play calling style was not a whole lot different, and at times was really painful to watch. And you were thinking, why is Casey not throwing the ball down the field? And whenever he did, you had success, but for some reason we just were unwilling to do it. So Jared Anderson really pulls down that grade. I think I would probably give the players a B+, and I lump Jared Anderson in, and it goes down to a B-. That's how strongly I feel about it. Defense, you have to go A+, just because of the fact that the Big 12 is not a big defense league. It's a lot of offense, a lot of spread. But TCU came in with a great reputation of being a defensive school, and they held it up. Everyone was thinking, that Gary Patterson defense is not going to get it done, especially with all these youngsters. Well, they did. Obviously, Devontae Fields was huge. Chris Hackett was huge. Chucky Hunter was massive. The 3 or 4 defensive tackles that we rotated in throughout the year did an amazing job, especially Pearson. and Chucky Hunter. Obviously, Maponga was out and injured, but obviously, if you look at the postseason awards and guys getting recognized, he was lumped in there with Fields and Hackett and all the big guys as people looking at him and saying, truly did a great job. Defense, great job. Special teams was probably a B plus, A minus until Oberkrom towards the end of the year and you have to expect this, and it's funny because Gary Patterson, when Oberkrom was off to a great hot start at the beginning of the year, he said, listen, guys, you need to cool the jets on this kid. He still's got a lot of ways to go before he has it figured out. And lo and behold, he crashes. Now, I don't want to say it's because Gary Patterson criticized him. It probably wasn't. There was probably a thousand things going through the kid's head. But what are you going to expect from a freshman kicker, right? In the Big 12 conference play, things aren't necessarily going to go 100% right every single time. So, that combined with, I agree totally with what you guys said, Sky Dawson at times looked totally lost on the field, like he'd never tracked a punt. And I also penalized them from the coaching staff standpoint for not deciding to put Deontay Gray and or Brandon Carter back instead of Sky Dawson more often. I think Deontay Gray returned punts in that first game. Did he return more than 1 or 2 punts the rest of the season? Trey maybe looked that up. I don't think he did. The guy was just written out of the game plan, and I understand that Gary Patterson said after the Grambling game that on the punt return that he brought back, he actually took it the wrong way. On the second punt return, it was a left return, and he ran right. And Gary Patterson said if he'd run left, he had another touchdown. So, maybe what we saw in that game as far as the incredible performance wasn't necessarily going to replicate itself out. But the fact that you had Sky Dawson fumbling 1 every 5 times he went back there, even if he recovered it, you'd think that they would step in and say, this kid has got to figure it out. Ethan Perry was fantastic. I'm very much happy that Caleb Patterson did not punt more than 5 or 6 times throughout the year. Ethan Perry deserved every single shot, and other than I think two or three shanks that I can remember, was really, really consistent. And it's really nice to have a punter who is not tremendously fat that we have to hear about in every single broadcast, but can also punt the ball 60 yards every single time. Let's just say praise the Lord for that. Low B's for special teams. Overall, I go with B. If I said the team was going to have an A year, they're in the 9 to 10 win range, including a bowl game. If they're going to have a B year, they're in the 7, 8, 9 win range, including the bowl game. If they're going to have a C year, they're 5, 6, 7 wins in the Big 12. So, we're probably going to end up right about 7 or 8, which means it's a B. And I can't complain about that. For our first year, I think no one else in the Big 12, other than maybe Baylor, gave us any shot to do anything. Now coming out of this year, all I hear is consistent respect from everyone else in the Big 12. And frankly, all we've been hearing about is so-and-so school wants to hire Gary Patterson. And, that's the greatest form of flattery, is they're trying to steal your coach in college football. So overall, my report card is just like y'all's. It's a lot of positive in there. And with the amount of youngsters that we put out in the field, you'd have to think that next year's going to be pretty special, provided we don't lose the entire offensive and defensive, too deep injuries before, LSU. So we'll have to see what happens as we go through the offseason. Let's look ahead a little bit real quick before we go into our other topics, including the bowl game. Look ahead to 2013. We're going to skip over the bowl game, skip ahead to spring practice and into 2013. Trey, when you look at the way this team is structured, we've got 10, practically 11 starters in defense, but we'll call it 10 officially. We've got almost all the offensive unit coming back, with the exception of 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, and a couple offensive linemen, which really aren't that big of hits because of the depth we have at that position. What do you see from this team, and what is the things that you were specifically looking for as far as growth when we get into spring and summer ball before we hit LSU Cowboy Stadium September 1?
Well, I guess the first thing I am going to be interested in this spring is if, all the reports and all that are in fact true, that Casey Paul Hall will be coming back and rejoining the team, and I guess competing for the starting job. So it'll be interesting to see, how he looks in spring. Is there any rest, things like that. And, I think next season, I'm very optimistic. I think this team will take a step forward. You've got, Texas coming here, Baylor coming here, but you have to go to both Oklahoma schools, so that won't be easy. And obviously starting off with LSU is not going to be an easy task either. but I think you'll see this team take a step forward next season. You know, maybe get in the 9, 10, 11 win range. I don't know if I'm being a homer on this, but when I look back at this season and look and see if they had Casey Paul Hall and Wayman James, I don't think they lose Iowa State, and I think they probably pull out the Texas Tech game. So, if you go on that assumption, then the Frogs are a 9-3 team this season, and so it wouldn't shock me if they're healthy in 2013 to see them get to 9, 10, maybe 11 wins. But I think, and maybe get to that Cotton Bowl or a BCS Bowl or something like that. But I think the year after 2014 will be the big year that the team takes the biggest step forward. But I'm extremely optimistic about 2013 because I think when you look at around the Big 12, there's Texas isn't very good right now. Texas Tech, their coach ditched them. Baylor, they might be a little better, but they're not going to have their quarterback. And so, it's kind of like I look at the Oklahoma schools as the biggest threats to TCU next season. And, I'm not going to be surprised if they're right in the mix to win the Big 12 because I think they have the talent. It's just, will this youth grow up enough? Did they get enough experience this year? And, will they get enough work in spring and fall before next season starts, to take the giant leap forward and talk about, winning the Big 12 and maybe national championship type aspirations. But, I'm definitely already looking forward to next season because I think as fun as this one was, 2013 could have the potential to be even funner, more fun, whatever.
There you go, buddy. Yeah, what's funny about 2013 is in 2012, we had like 7 games before we thought we would know anything about the team. In 2013, we're going to know something week 1. Game 1, first game of the year in college football, ESPN primetime Cowboys Stadium. We're going to know exactly what we need to know about TCU and what we're going to see out of that team, which is different, right? But I like it. It reminds me of the Rose Bowl season when we had Oregon State in Cowboys Stadium. And we said, if we come out and win this game and have a solid performance, that's probably going to put us on the path. And that's exactly what it did. Jamie, over to you. Let's go ahead and skip the bowl game, go into the spring and summer. What are you looking ahead to? What do you think you need to see out of this team as far as how they need to grow? And what are you thinking you see as far as 2013 and success-wise for the Frogs?
Biggest areas of growth that I need to see out of this team, first and foremost, comes from the offensive line. You've got 2 very young tackles. Mainly, I'm speaking of Aviant Collins. He struggled mightily this year at right tackle. Played the majority of the game at left tackle against Texas and played a little bit better, but I'm expecting a lot more things out of him next year. Give him another year in the weight room. Get him a little bit more confident with his footwork and where he's supposed to be with his hands and that kind of stuff. And if we can see great improvements out of him, and if he's playing left tackle and he's protecting the passer, regardless of whether it's Pahal or Boykin, I think you're going to see a lot more success out of this offense. I think you're going to see a little bit more fan-friendly play calling from this offense as well, because we'll be able to give Boykin or Pahal the time to throw the ball downfield, which neither quarterback had a whole lot of time. Regardless of the game that you want to reference this year. I'm also very, very excited about watching Aaron Green, the transfer from Nebraska, coming in at running back and just helping bulk up. Once again, we're going to have a big core of running backs coming out of the backfield with Catalon coming back. You've got Green. You've got the commit switch, Kyle Hicks from Texas to TCU. He switched his commitment a couple weeks ago. He's coming off knee surgery, but he should be ready to go for next year. Trevoris Johnson, another freshman that'll be coming in, who's just dynamite out of the backfield. And again, in defense, like you said, we basically aren't losing. We're losing Kenny Kane, who's the starter at linebacker, and that's it. Fields is back. Aponga hopefully will be back. Verrett, Hackett, Sam Carter, Marcus Mallett. You've got Joel Hasley still. Kevin White Jr. is coming back, and then you've got Chucky and Pearson up the middle, and just that defense next year is going to be such a force. And if they can play at the same level as they played this year, and they can do it from the start, I'm right there with you, Trey. I think we can at least win 9 games. If you think about it this way, Oklahoma, Texas Tech, Baylor, West Virginia, and Kansas State are all losing their starting quarterback. And if you look at those games, I mean, we went 2-3 in those games. And we should have beaten Texas Tech. We should have beaten Oklahoma. Kansas State was the really the only convincing loss in my mind out of those 5 games. And if you take away their senior quarterbacks, anything can happen. Look at what happened to us this year. And even look at the SMU and Baylor games from a year ago when Paul Hall was still really developing as a quarterback and as a leader on the offense. So, going into next year, looking at the competition in the Big 12, Trey, like you said, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State are still going to be very good teams. I really very confidently can say that TCU should be one of the front runners to win the Big 12. Whether or not that happens, obviously, is yet to be seen, and there's a lot of things that can factor in an offseason, as we found out this past year. But if all things stay the same, if Paul Hall comes back and who knows, wins his starting job back, with the guys that we've got coming in like Aaron Green, with the guys we have returning, I really see a lot of positives in the future for this team.
It's kind of funny to me, the 2 things real quick that you mentioned that I wanted to hit on before I get more general. As far as running back is concerned, I would have to guess that Kyle Hicks is going to be 4th at highest on the depth chart behind Wayman James, number 1, Aaron Green, number 2, BJ Keitel, number 3. And Kyle Hicks is like a really low 4. I would guess, just from what we've read so far, especially at Horn Funk Blitz, that the coaches are really looking at Kyle Hicks to redshirt next year, and to really give him a break, put him on the scout team, let him rest a little bit, and then be a redshirt freshman in 2014, when we'll have, of course, Wayman James that will be departing, and we'll need that extra spot of depth for the 3rd running back. So that's that. As far as quarterbacks are concerned, I've said this before on Frogs of War. We obviously tweet a lot about it. I'll just make the point emphatically here. I don't think there's any way that TCU gets to 10 wins next year if Trevon Boykin is the quarterback again. I think 10 wins or higher is a Casey Paul Hall team. That's it. Trevon Boykin's a fine quarterback. Right now, Trevon Boykin is not a national championship quarterback. He has a long way to go before he gets there. Not saying he can't get there. He has a long way to go before he gets there. We know who Casey Paul Hall is. If his head is right, he was a small step this year away from being a championship caliber quarterback. As long as his head is right, I have to believe that he can take that step and be that guy next year. And regardless of whatever your thoughts are about what happened, you have to think that if he comes back and performs well, that he's going to get the job. Now, it doesn't mean Boykin's not going to get some sets. He's going to get some plays. But you'd have to think that that's going to be Paul Hall's job to lose if he can come back and show that he's still the guy. And what's nice about it, though, is if you start looking at the depth chart, it sets up beautifully. You got Paul Hall as a senior. Boykin will play, probably get, I would guess, 20 to 30 snaps, or 20 to 30% of the snaps next year on different types of sets as a sophomore. In 2014, you have Boykin as the experienced junior. You have Tyler Matthews being able to redshirt this year, obviously, will just be coming up right behind Boykin, but will have a 2-year cushion, which is beautiful. And you start to see that perfect quarterback shuttle that schools like USC have had for years now and has been able to sustain them at a high level in college football. You just have great quarterback after great quarterback after great quarterback, and you don't have, as we saw with UT in the last couple of years, they've had a bunch of quarterbacks come through who couldn't handle it, and that's what's allowed their program to drop back. TCU is able to get Paul Hall back next year, give Boykin a chance to grow. That's got to be the recipe for success going forward. I have to believe that, like Jamie said, it's all about the offensive line now. They're losing 2 seniors that are just, you hate to bash seniors, and I'm not bashing them, I don't think, by saying this, who did not perform up to the standards that we expected this year, even as seniors. At times, you would think that a guy like Fry was having as many problems as Collins, because he would have false starts and would jump off sides, jump too early, and it would miss blocks. He'd have defensive tackles busting through and getting to Boykin before he could do anything, while Collins was holding his own on the side. It was frustrating to watch. The offensive line has to be the priority for Eddie Williamson and Gary Patterson, and I believe that they're going to get that fixed in the spring. Open competition, that any guy is open to any spot, and they're going to say, okay, go out there and win your job. And I would expect that that going into the fall, once we come back for the fall, we will have our 5 offensive linemen and we'll have the 2 deep. And it'll be, this is our guy. We'll have Unit 1 and Unit 2, and that's it. And we'll be able to go forward knowing better, is Michael Thompson going to be there? Are we going to have the depth with Tayo at left tackle still? We'll have all those questions answered. If we don't have those questions answered because of injury or guys not stepping up, I think we're going to have problems. That's just where everything is going to rest. Trey, I know you want to say one more thing about Aaron Green before we move on, though.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and I was glad, Jamie, that you brought him up, because I just talking to a couple of people that kind of get to watch practice more than the media or normal everyday fan. I've heard this last season Aaron Green ran a lot of scout team running back in practice, and that he was an absolute killer even against TCU's first team defense. So I'm with you. I can't wait to see that guy in action, because he could be, really good complement to Wayman James and Catalan.
Let's move on real quick to the bowl game before we hit on a couple more topics and finish up for the night. Michigan State, obviously, in Arizona. I have to think, from my perspective, this is a game that TCU should win. And if TCU does not win, we'll probably look back and say we dropped one. But I want to get your perspective first. Trey, give me some thoughts about TCU versus Michigan State. Give me your thoughts on just how nice it is to be in the Big 12 bowl ranking, or the bowl system, rather than be in the Mountain West Conference bowl system, and a little prediction for the game.
Yeah, the bowl situation is obviously a ton better than it was in the Mountain West Conference. Luckily we're not playing, we're recording this on Wednesday, the 19th, Thursday, is the Poinsettia Bowl, and we're real familiar with that one as being TCU fans. So yeah, that bowl situation is about 100 times better. Unfortunately, I don't know how good this bowl game is going to be this year. I mean, it's awesome to have a matchup against, a Big Ten team like Michigan State, but it's like, they can run the ball, but can they do much else? And it's like TCU, they have their, offensive struggles going. So I'm afraid this one might be, 14-10 or something, and be, an ugly type game. But I do think the Frogs can beat Michigan State, especially, if Boykin plays well. I think it kind of, is up to him, how the game's going to go. I have total confidence in our defense, and I can't remember who posted it in one of the comment sections, but it was like, this game is a Gary Patterson, dream, because you're not really too worried about Michigan State throwing, deep down the field on you. And it seems like Gary Patterson usually has a lot of success against the teams that are heavy run like that. So I think TCU will get the win. I think, it might be a low-scoring defensive battle, but, I'm looking forward to it. It's a different, bowl game, Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl. It doesn't sound great, but I'm still excited for it. And, I think TCU definitely gets the win.
Over to you. Obviously, your thoughts on the Big 12 bowls. Michigan State obviously being our first attempt at a bowl win in the Big 12, and a little bit of a prediction from you. We're going to be getting into this obviously a lot more next week on Frogs of War as we begin the bowl game week. As we did throughout the season, we'll have a full game week as always. We'll get into the game a lot more specifically next week. But Jamie, your thoughts, kind of off the cuff here, if you can.
Certainly. First of all, score prediction for the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl. I'm going to say 13-10 TCU. Like you said, Trey, this is a Gary Patterson dream game. He gets to come out and just stop the run, which he loves to do. We saw it against Wisconsin. We saw it against teams like Kansas State this year. He's so good at loading the box but not giving up a pass. The thing about Michigan State is they lost a bunch of close games this year. I think there's some crazy stat. They lost 5 games by a total of 13 points. And frankly, that's because they can't throw the ball. They get down, and even if it's not a big deficit, they have no means of moving the ball quickly down the field to score and make up that deficit. So I think if TCU can get out early, get a touchdown, get a field goal, just get a lead, they'll be able to load the box and stop Levon Bell for a little bit anyways. As far as the rest of the bowls go, though, I think really there are two marquee matchups for Big 12 teams this year. And that first and foremost, it's the Fiesta Bowl with Kansas State and Oregon. I'm very, very excited to see Kansas State's defense against that electric Oregon offense. Secondly, and this is essentially 1A and 1B for me, but it's Texas A&M and Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl. I personally had my fingers crossed that it would be Texas A&M and Texas, but with Northern Illinois getting in and the whole bowls and the Big 12 being shuffled around a little bit, I think this is going to be a dream matchup for people watching, because you've got the Heisman winner and Johnny Manziel, you've got Landry Jones, you've got two pretty decent defenses, but two teams that really know how to move the ball and put it in the end zone. As far as that goes, those are definitely two bowls to watch out for if you're just a Big 12 fan in general. But again, I think TCU handles Michigan State. It's going to be a low-scoring game. It's not going to be pretty to watch. And as the guys over at Everyday Should Be Saturday mentioned in their video post about the game, their video preview, if you will, they just shouted the word punt probably 15, 16 times in a row. I think that's pretty accurate.
Michigan State scores 13-10. I will literally just shit a brick while watching that game. That's going to be literally the most boring / nerve-wracking game.
Oh, absolutely.
And the idea that, based on what your scoring prediction is, that Jaden Obercrum is at some point going to kick the go-ahead or winning field goal literally gives me a heart attack. I just had a heart attack like right now. I mean, I hope not. I'm really shooting for more like a 17-6 game. That would be awesome. But as far as it's concerned for me, I'm extremely happy we're in the Big 12. One of the biggest things I thought of when we moved over to the Big 12, first thing I thought of was revenue, just because I knew the athletic program was going to be in a solid position going forward, and that's huge for the university. 2, the second thing I thought of, though, was never again will have to go to the Poinsettia Bowl. If I have to go out west, I'll go to the Holiday Bowl, which, I don't like. I don't like the location. It doesn't pay a lot, but it's the Holiday Bowl, right? There's a ton of history there. Just even though we hate Texas, the Oregon-Texas game with Harrington back in the day, they have a ton of epic matchups in the history of the Holiday Bowl, and it's awesome to be a part of that. I like that we got the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl as opposed to Houston. I tweeted this about the game. Dynamically different payout, and I know that the Big 12 does share bowl revenues, but it is not equal. They do not put all the money in a pot and you divide it by 10. It's a 70-30 share, so that TCU is going to get a larger percentage of that bowl-specific shared revenue because they were in a higher paying game. That's the best that I can explain it. It was explained to me that while it is shared, they're going to get a larger percentage of the money because they played in a higher payout bowl. So from that perspective, I was happy, better than Houston. Michigan State obviously is a team that we should beat from the perspective of we're a strong defensive team. Michigan State has struggled mightily on offense this year. Their defense has some pretty good numbers. They've held some opponents to low total scoring, but you have to think that's a product of the Big Ten, which was just mega down this year. Like I said, my score prediction I think right now is 17-6. I will probably change that between now and Friday picks a week from now. But I have to think TCU is going to win. If TCU does not win that game, the post-mortem that we'll have on Frogs of War, I will likely mention that I think will play a large role going into the spring. Could be a positive role to push the team, but I think it could also be negative, in that they could leave the season with a taste in their mouth of saying, we didn't get it done, and then they start pointing fingers. And guys like Trevon Boykin, guys like Jared Anderson, offensive coordinator, start really feeling the pressure, which is sometimes a good thing, sometimes not. So it would be nice if we just can solidify the win there, get to the 8-win plateau, and move on from the season to bigger and better things. Again, keep your eyes on Frogs of War. Game week will start next Monday. And I will be out of town. I'm going to be in Tahoe/San Francisco during that week, so you won't see a lot from me. But Jamie, Trey, Hawkeye Frog, Mr. Nick Priest is going to be posting, and I think I'm going to get Purple Wimple, who's kind of had to move on to bigger, better things. I'm going to try to get him back to do a little bit more posting that week and finish out 2012 in style for him. So lots of good stuff. The usuals, like I said, lots of Michigan State game tape to watch as well if you want to watch up the Spartans and see what they're all about. But for now, we're going to move on to TCU basketball. TCU has a basketball team, folks. I know you've been watching this season. Been up and down a little bit. The injury bug bit the Frogs just like they did the football team. Trey, I know you've been watching this year, making a point to watch a lot more basketball. What have you seen so far from TCU men's basketball under Trent Johnson the first season, and how well the season has gone so far?
Yeah, I think you said it, best. It seems like the voodoo of the football team with the injuries kind of is transferring over to the basketball team now. I hope it doesn't hit our world champion rifle team next because they have a dynasty going. But
that might be an ugly injury too, the rifle team injury, right?
Yeah, it might not be very pretty. But I've watched, definitely been trying to watch a few more games. And I posted about it a week or two ago, and it just seems like there's still a few of the smaller areas that they need to improve upon, like rebounding, free throw shooting. It's like they play solid defense. You can't really, obviously they can improve, but they play, really good defense. And, I think Trent Johnson has that part of the team going well. But it's just like I don't know if the offense has enough playmakers to keep them in a lot of these games, especially some of these tough ones coming up with Tech and Kansas and those type of teams. So that is going to be their biggest challenge this season is just can they score enough points. But you know what? So far, I have to say I am pleased with what Trent Johnson's been able to do with this group of guys. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this team looks when he gets more of his type of recruits in here and, kind of puts his imprint on the basketball program a little more. So, that's kind of what I'm looking at, and it's rough. I'm not even going to lie. Sometimes it's tough to watch TCU basketball, but I think it's definitely gonna be trending in the right direction.
To you, your thoughts as you've watched a lot of men's basketball so far this year, and what you're seeing so far from the Frogs.
I've got to kind of echo what Trey was saying. It's going to be interesting to see what Trent Johnson can do with this team when he gets his recruits in, namely Kaviar Shepherd and Brandon Parrish, two big names that he's signed this year that are coming to be on the team next year. Specifically, Shepherd, the 6'10", 225-pound center out of Prime Prep, 4-star recruit. He's probably the highest-rated Rivals and ESPN recruit that TCU has ever signed, and he was the first person Trent Johnson landed. But as far as this team this year is concerned, it's a very, very defensive-minded team, and that's largely in part to what Trent Johnson has tried to instill in his boys. Offensively, it's ugly. They need to learn how to move the ball. Their spacing is not that great. Kian Anderson has been doing all he can, basically, but he's averaging almost 3 turnovers a game, and that's pretty unacceptable for your starting point guard. Like you guys both have mentioned, we lost Amric Fields at the very beginning of the season in the SMU game, and that was a huge loss as he was expected to be the leader. Last night against against Southern, Jarvis Ray hurt his foot, and it came out today he's going to be out for about 6 to 8 weeks, and that's another big loss. That puts a lot of pressure on players like Cannell Crossland and Garland Green to really step up their game. They're going to be seeing more minutes now. They're going to be needing to take on more of that scoring role. But I've been relatively impressed. They're 7-4. If they had handled things like they should have against SMU and Tulsa, they could easily be 9-2 right now. But this isn't against very stiff competition. Devonta Abram needs to start crashing the boards harder. McKinney has been doing a decent job of crashing the boards, but again, when they get into Big 12 play, things things have the potential to get really, really ugly. And so what they're going to need to do, they're going to need to focus on is good ball movement on offense. Excuse me, and really, really focusing on rebounding and closing out defensive sets. They've got to eliminate offensive rebounds. They've been allowing, I think, almost 9 offensive rebounds a game, and that's completely unacceptable. And that will make them pay very, very heavily in the Big 12 when we get there.
Again, we'll run down the injuries for everybody if they missed him. Obviously, the biggest one, Amarick Fields, tore everything in his right knee in the 5 seconds into the second game of the year, and he will get a medical red shirt. Will be back next year as a junior, I believe. Backup center Aaron Durley, who, well, although he was a freshman this year, was expected to play and provide good depth behind Abron as a 6'10", 250, 60-pound guy. He tore his ACL in the preseason, will also get a red shirt and will be back as a redshirt freshman next year. And obviously, as we just mentioned, Jarvis Ray, who was kind of an interesting thing. It was a mythical figure in the Jim Christian era who did something to offend Jim Christian so that he could never play. Trent Johnson comes in and he started 4 or 5 games, has played almost every game, didn't travel on their last road trip, and we now know has the foot injury and he'll be out for a little while. It just continues. And I want to echo what was said about Kean Anderson. It's kind of a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde situation. The guy is typically the best offensive threat that TCU has in any set, which is great because we need offense, but it's also bad because he's the point guard. And he should be setting the table for other guys. And as the point guard, right about, I think is he just above or just under 3 turnovers? I thought he was just under, but
it's
about.
Just under. He's at 2.9 a game.
Yeah, I mean, 3. We'll round, with no problem rounding it up. That's unacceptable, like Jamie said. It's got to get better. The guy's only a sophomore, still has a ton of talent. Probably, if he continues the way he's playing right now, I would guess he'll make an honorable mention All Big 12 at the end of the year because they usually like to throw in somebody from every school. But, he has to be better going into next year. The recruits were mentioned here, and that's actually going to be our final segment of the night. Talk a little bit about signing day, which was earlier in November. We'll talk a little bit about the basketball classes here and baseball, which were every single class was extremely, extremely good. I'll go ahead and run through the recruits for basketball, and then I'll have Trey and Jamie throw in the 2 cents that they have. For basketball, obviously, the names have been thrown out there. Brandon Parrish, a 6'6" swing guy from Seguin and Seguin High School in Arlington, Texas, is a ESPN top 100 guy. He is a dynamic scorer. He is a very dangerous three-point shooter, but also loves to drive the ball. Very explosive to the basket, and is a big rebounder for his high school team. I don't know how that's going to transfer over as he's only 6'6", but the guy can get up, and I would expect he is going to start next year unless someone else steps up for TCU, unless they can't find a role for him or if they think he's going to be kind of a Manu Ginobili type. But that kind of scoring threat TCU is going to need. The big guy, the big kind of gem in the class is Caviar Shepard, the center from Prime Prep Academy in Dallas. Not playing in high school this year. Obviously, Prime Prep did not make the UIL certification. Thanks a lot, Deion Sanders. But played a ton last summer in prep ball, got a lot of nods, was being recruited by literally every single top program in the country: Baylor, Kansas, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Texas, Texas A&M, North Carolina, Duke, Kentucky. Literally every single program that you would think is a good basketball program with a great coach that recruits, they were after Shepard. And Trent Johnson got him. And it, again, was one of those situations where he wanted to stay close to home and go somewhere where he could become a legacy at a program. He's 6'10", right about 225. That 225 is a lean 225. He's going to have to put on some muscle, but has shown a lot of touch around the basket and should be a guy that I'm not sure if he's going to start right away next year. I'm not sure how Trent Johnson's going to feel about pushing his star player, probably one of the consensus top 3 centers and a top 50 player in the nation. I'm not sure if he's going to want to shove him out on the court right away, but the guy's going to be a difference maker over his 1, 2, 3, or 4 years. Who knows here at TCU. The third guy, which is the guy that TCU men's basketball is actually a lot of people are really excited about, is Michael Williams from Ronald Reagan High School in San Antonio. The guy is a dynamic scorer and can play the 1 or the 2. Was really heavily recruited by Penn, Creighton, and Nebraska. which are three schools that obviously you could tell the guy's really smart. He's focused on academics, but more of the smaller school D1 level that really focus on guard play. That's why they wanted him. He's a dynamic scorer, and he could play the one of the two position. He decided to come on to TCU, and he's going to be a really good get for Trent Johnson. I wouldn't be surprised if this time next year, through the first 10 games for TCU men's basketball, we're talking more about Michael Williams and Brandon Parrish than we are talking about Shepherd. That's just my 2 cents. Real quick, women's basketball also signed a truly dynamic class for the second year in a row, by the way. Headlined at the top by AJ Alex, who is a point guard out of Bel Air High School in Houston. She is a ESPN Top 100 player, extremely talented, was being recruited by Texas and Baylor, North Carolina, and Duke. Jada Butts, another guard from Louisville High School in Texas. She is just behind Alex, but a lot of people think that she's probably got a better future if she can become a little bit more athletic on the court, because she's a little bit taller, a little bit stronger than Alex is. And the third person in the class, Carol Willie from Cypress Falls, 6'2" forward. She's a center, actually. She's going to play the center for Jeff Mitty's team. The one thing you could tell looking over that roster this year and the people who are playing is they lack size. And they are going to be small compared to the Baylors and the Texases and the Oklahomas and the Oklahoma States and the Big 12. Carol Willie is going to be a big part of pushing TCU women's basketball back to the forefront of TCU sports next year, and I think she's going to be a really dynamic force. But, okay, so those are the people. Those are the names for basketball, and we'll get to baseball in a second. But real quick over to you, Trey. Obviously, it's been a long time since we've been able to say the words TCU men's basketball recruiting success, right? You know, it's really fun to see. What are your thoughts on what Trent Johnson's doing so far?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, I mean, you nailed it. I am happy with what he's doing. Obviously, the big thing with recruiting is once you get these, you know, once you get this talent to Fort Worth, you got to make sure that they pan out. And, you know, I think he'll do that. At least I hope he will. I don't know a lot about the baseball recruiting at all, so I can't really touch on that too much for you. But I am pleased with the basketball recruiting. Obviously, have never really had any concern about football recruiting, but I think this is just what you've seen so far is just, you know, one of the many benefits of being in the Big 12, because now, you know, more especially for basketball, because it's kind of like, you know, the facilities really aren't that great right now. So, you know, but being in the Big 12 kind of helps alleviate some of that, you know, part of the recruiting process that recruits look at. So, you know, I'm definitely pleased with what we've seen so far.
Big lover of basketball. You talked about it a little bit before. Any final thoughts about the recruiting classes for men or women's basketball?
Yeah, you know, I couldn't agree more when you say that we might be talking more about Brandon Parrish and Michael Williams at the end of the next year over Carviar Shepherd. But one note about the facilities, Trey, you mentioned that they aren't great, and I agree with you 100%. Daniel Meyer Coliseum is in desperate need of renovation, but they are making, I believe, about $40 million worth of improvements underneath the stadium, specifically to the locker rooms and the player areas and that kind of thing. So when we are bringing in these new recruits in the next few seasons, we will have that to point to, as well as the new weight room and the new training facilities that are attached to the football stadium. What a lot of people tend to forget about when they're talking about basketball recruiting is those basketball players are using a lot of the same training facilities and a lot of the same health facilities that the football team is. And with that being the case and all of those things just recently being upgraded for TCU, I think we have a little bit more recruiting leverage than people give us credit for. Now, as far as the actual stadium goes, yes, that's in desperate need of renovation. We need to just tear that thing to the ground and start over. Maybe Frogs of War can start a fund for that. But as far as recruiting goes, I'm pretty pleased with both teams, men and women, with the classes that they're bringing in so far. Hopefully, we can land one or two more slightly under the radar players. And just on one side note about women's basketball, they actually played well tonight, but they lost to Georgia, who's the number 6 team in the country right now. Georgia improves to 12-0. The Frogs fall to 7-4. They lost. I think the final score was 72-59. But yeah, this is easily the best recruiting class men's basketball has seen since I've been paying attention, which has been about 10 years. So, if you have any interest in men's basketball whatsoever, you should be pretty excited for 2013.
And two quick things. Obviously, when we brought Trent Johnson in, the big shocker was payday, right? The guy, it came out that he was being paid somewhere in the nature of 1.4 to 1.6 million base salary plus some performance kickers on top of that. So TCU made the investment thinking that this was the guy who, number one, could be the frontline recruiter that we needed, but number two was going to be the kind of coach that could develop a very strong program and that wasn't going to leave. And Trent Johnson kind of said that emphatically when he first got here, was I came here to retire, and that him and his wife wanted to be in this area for the rest of their life. And you have to be so ecstatic that the first class he gets a top 5 center, top 50 player. He gets Brandon Parrish, who just about everyone wanted, and he's able to convince a guy like Michael Williams, who was looking to get a great education and play at a top level, lower level, but top school D1 program like a Creighton or a Penn, and decided to come over to TCU. That says a lot about the university and about Trent Johnson. And the guys that they're going after for 2014, by the way, are not slouches. They're going after the best of the best, going up against Texas and Baylor and Oklahoma and Kentucky and all the above. And once again, they look really close to getting some of those big-name guys. And it could be a dynamic class. And on the Georgia game, I think they lost by about 12 or 13. Through most of the second half for TCU women's basketball, it was within 8 to 10 points. I think they had it down to 5 at one point. The TCU women had the deficit down to 5. So for the amount of freshmen that we're playing for TCU women's basketball this year to be that close against the Georgia, which is a very strong team, is stellar. And it's great to see after they played Texas A&M, I think a week or two ago, and it wasn't necessarily a very good showing. It's good to see them rebound and come out strong. Just as a quick aside, and Jamie, I don't know if you have a thought on this or not, I believe that Jeff Mittie got a contract extension in September. No one in the media has reported on how long he's under contract. He got an extension back in 07 or 08 or 09, I believe, one of those years. It wasn't announced how long it was, and he got another extension here back a few months ago in September. But even with that said, I would not be surprised if we go through 2013, 2014, and they do not make significant strides if Jeff Mittie is not here anymore. I mean, the guy was a great coach through the mid-2000s, and we had some great years. But you have to think with the talent that he's brought in the last few years, and we have it. It's on the court. We've had good recruiting classes. They just are not turning the corner for some reason. And if this latest class cannot get it going next year, you'd have to think that maybe they're going to look somewhere else. But
yeah, no, I totally agree with you. The talent is there to compete. The difficult thing about women's basketball is you have those 2 or 3 marquee programs in the country. You have UConn, Tennessee. You can throw in Stanford and Baylor as well, where all of those girls want to go play at those 4 schools. And if they're getting recruited by those schools at all, 99% of the time they're going there. But for the talent that has been coming to TCU, they've been performing very well in the Mountain West over the last few years. They've gotten off to a decent start with an incredibly young team this year. It is kind of frustrating to see this talent kind of go to waste. And Jeff Mittie does have a lot to do with that. I'm looking right now in 3 or 4 places. I can't see where any terms of his contract have been disclosed. You would have to imagine
30 minutes yesterday trying to find that. I mean, it's been pretty well hidden.
Yeah, so regardless of contract extension or what his current standing is with how much they're paying him, you've got to expect that the clock is ticking. The seat is definitely getting warmer. And now with a young team, they may have a little bit more leeway than if this was a team laden with juniors and seniors. But in the next 2 or 3 years, like you were saying, I can definitely see them, the front office, if you will, make a change if things aren't improving. I mean, with the state of women's basketball in the Big 12, the women should be at the very least in the top half of the conference. And if that doesn't happen, I think we can all consider that a disappointment.
From the talent standpoint, if you just look at the recruits that have come in, they have a top 5 talent base on that team right now. I find it hard to believe that they're going to finish in the top 5 of the Big 12 this year. they would have to have some pretty dynamic performance changes between now and the start of Big 12 play for that to happen. So, as far as money is concerned with Jeff Mittie, he's in the $300,000 to $500,000 range with some really heavy incentives. So if he was to make the NCAA tournament or advance pretty far in the Big 12 tournament, he would start racking up more cash than that. But so it's not a matter of whether or not we're paying him too much. In the women's basketball program, as to some people's surprise, is actually a fairly strong revenue producer for TCU athletics, stronger than you might think. It's just there has to be some improvements there. As far as Daniel Meyer Coliseum was thrown out there, I want to throw out the couple notes that I have on that. As we reported back like last summer or something like that, there are basically three options on the table. There's a small, a medium, and a large. The small is in the $10 to $20 million range, which is specifically just about reforming the locker room and the player lounge. The medium is in the $20 to $30 million range, which is everything that's the small has. And then they're also looking at redoing some of the bathrooms and some structural things, widening some parts of the concourses. And then there's a large, and that's in the $35 to $45 million range. And I had been told at one point that it went up to $50 million for the max, but the fundraising never even got close to that, so they put it off on the tip, but they totally took it off the table. But the higher level option is you've got all of the player lounges, the locker rooms. You're gutting the bottom part of the stadium where the bathrooms are to totally fix that. And you're coming in on the concourse level, widening out the concourses in almost every single section to make it much bigger, much more at home. They're going to totally take out some of the steel and the plating that they have to make it look much nicer. And it's been mentioned a lot that Wichita State's, Wichita State Stadium was built by the same manufacturer, and they put in about $30 to $40 million into their stadium. TCU is going down that same path. It's going to look a lot similar as far as structure is concerned. I wouldn't expect, and Chris Del Conte actually mentioned today in his chat that they've received they didn't say three, but it's the three plans that they've requested from HKS Architect Designs to tell them this is what you're looking at as far as what it's going to look like, what it's going to cost, time frame, etc. And they're going to get together and they're going to make a decision. Trent Johnson's I've been told, has been promised that at the very minimum they're absolutely doing the locker room and a player lounge specifically for basketball after the season. And that's, that was almost part of his recruitment, is they definitely are going to do that. And the money is there for that. The question is, they would obviously love to do the huge $40 million package. The money is not there yet. They do not yet have the commitments from donors to fund that project. Now that they have the architecture and then the designs, that will move the needle for a lot of the people and the families that donate money to TCU. Obviously, they like to see that, and that'll push it. Can they get to $40 million? As a realist, probably not. And we're probably going to be looking at that middle range where they do as much as they can to make the player accommodations very nice, and touch up a little bit on the practice facility. And they go in and do some concourse fixes and a little bit inside Daniel Meyer Coliseum, but mostly it's going to be the same. And hope that the Big 12 revenues stay where they are, and hope that the basketball team improves so that in 3 to 4 years they could talk about doing a really dynamic change to DMC. But it's just not there now. They know they have to do something this offseason, but the money's just not going to be there, frankly. So that's where the DMC is. Let's touch really quickly on baseball, obviously my favorite sport, and talk about recruiting and what they're going to be doing with Lupton Stadium this year before Big 12 play starts. Baseball recruiting, the 2013 class, obviously, if you follow Frogs Award, you knew all the commits before they even announced them on Go Frogs. I mean, we've had that up there for months, but they were looking at a really dynamic class that's extremely well balanced. It's going to be a little bit more susceptible to the draft in terms of losing guys than we did in 2012. I think a lot of that still has to be fleshed out between now and the MLB draft in June. But we could be looking at some guys that we really want here that aren't going to make it. There are 8 position players that we have: Connor Beck, Garrett Crane, Will Foreman, Will Fox, Eric Garza, Billy McKinney, Walker Pennington, TJ Scott, and Ty Slanina. I probably have that totally wrong, but that's the phonetic pronunciation. Really strong class. A lot of guys who right now you have to say are in the outfielder mold because they haven't gotten to campus yet. There's no way that we know where they're going to fit in. Some of them obviously are going to be in the outfield. Some are going to move to the infield. Some of them are probably going to get moved to catcher for some backup. The top guys in this class, Billy McKinney stands out. He is a top 100 draft prospect right now. He is getting a lot of attention from MLB teams. If Billy McKinney is with TCU on campus in next fall and he does not get signed, it is because he decided not to sign with an MLB team that drafted him in the top 3 rounds, which I find unlikely. He got injured, and his draft stock dropped tremendously, similar to Mitchell Traver in the 2012 class who dropped this year for us. Or something else dynamic happens that affects his value. Right now, teams look at Billy McKinney as a left-handed power hitter that can play anywhere in the outfield or at first base, and they see him as the kind of guy they're going to build their team around. It's hard to see him making it to campus. On the pitching side, they've got 7 guys. Tyler Alexander, Ryan Burnett, Brandon Gilson are the lefties. Brian Howard, Jordan Kipper, Alex Mata, and Robbie Medell are the righties. Tyler Alexander is a really top-level left-handed pitcher who's getting a ton of looks from the draft right now. He reminds a lot of guys of a very young and raw Billy Zito, but with better stuff, frankly. And I would expect that Tyler Alexander, if I had to guess, will be a New York Yankees draft pick in the 4th round this year, and he'll probably go. Brian Howard, really big right-handed guy. He's 6'9", I think. I think he's just over 200 pounds. The guy is kind of like a Chris Young mold as a pitcher, but his velocity this year is over the summer through the fall really jumped up. He went from an 84 to 85 mile-an-hour fastball guy to being an 88 to 90 mile-an-hour guy in all the showcases this fall. He's got a huge breaking ball, an advanced feel for his pitches, very smooth to the plate, which is not something that you see a lot from 6'9" guys. And when teams see that, a 6'9" guy with that kind of stuff, they see extreme projectability. And I would be surprised if Brian Howard didn't get picked up in the first 10 rounds, and I would be surprised if he made it to TCU. But again, anything can happen. It's way too early at this point in December to be saying. But either way, it's a top 10 class nationally. Baseball classes are not judged on signing day. They were judged on the first day of class, on who makes it to campus. So we'll talk about this class and how it ranks in the Big 12 then. But overall, a fantastic baseball class. Jamie or Trey, do you have anything to say about baseball? Sometimes I'm the only one who cares. Any thoughts?
Well, I'm pretty excited to see which of these guys actually make it past draft day or the draft days for the MLB and actually are on campus in the fall. But some interesting things that are going on with the actual facilities are they're moving the fences in, if I'm not mistaken, and they've taken away the hill out down the third baseline, out past the stands in the third base, where we always used to see those little kids sliding on cardboard. And frankly, I'm amazed that none of them ever was killed by a fly ball or anything like that. But so there's some facility changes that are happening too for the next season, aren't there?
They're looking at right about an $8 million improvement to Lupton. Overall, the facilities plan that they've drawn out that Jim Schlossnagle has said that he needs, and frankly, he's probably a top 5 coach in the country, and so the school has really tried to provide for him. The total scope is that they need to move the fences in. They need to build some outfield berms for fans to sit at. They're going to eventually move the hill that's, if you could imagine it, down the right field foul line that the kids roll down. That is going to go away for safety purposes. They are going to totally dig out the locker room and make it much, much bigger than it is. They want to make it the best in the nation, and the schematics and the designs that I have seen are really dynamic. It's going to be a beautiful space. They're going to have a full team meeting room there at Lupton as well, so that they don't have to start doing meetings, in other parts of campus. They can do it all there. They're going to have things like study rooms and bigger coaches' offices, and they're going to expand the training facilities. They wanted to expand the batting cages. They wanted to move around the bullpens a little bit so that they were a little bit larger, and all these kinds of things. And there were things to the stadium as well. They've talked about adding in a couple more patios on the outfield berms and putting in a couple more boxes if they can find room, and more seating. They've talked about all these things. For this year specifically, what you're going to see is the fences are moving in. The program has asked that they're not going to go ahead and release the figures right now. Keep your eye on the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. They're going to have those figures pretty soon to talk, going forward here in the next couple of weeks to talk about what those are going to be. But it's dynamically closer in. So it should play well for TCU as far as being able to produce a little bit more offense next year, especially since we're going to have a much more younger team. They've went ahead and fixed up the batting cages like they wanted to, and then a couple other little things, but all the other major projects are pretty much on hold right now. In total, it's in the range of $15 to $20 million. They're doing about $8 million right now. It's totally funded, obviously donor funded. The rest of the money, they're just waiting to come in. They have all of the designs that they want. Everything's pretty much ready to go. It's just that, when you're looking at this athletic program and where you're going to allocate money, obviously basketball has got all the attention right now. Even football, they're going to be doing some changes in the offseason, to improve some more things with A&G Carter Stadium. Baseball always falls third in line, even though there are a couple families that, support the program pretty steadily. So it'll be slow, but I would guess about 2 years from now, Lufkin Stadium is going to be at the point that it needs to be, I would say, probably the second best facilities in all of the Big 12. And it's going to be pretty dynamic. And I mean, they already get all the recruits that they want. So it's just a matter of making it look good, and hopefully keeping Jim Schlossnagle around, who also got a contract extension this fall. And as far as I could tell, is now the third highest paid athletic employee behind Gary Patterson and Trent Johnson, which is how it should be. So lots of good things in regards to baseball and basketball and football. Obviously, we talked about tonight. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. Angry Trey, your final thoughts here on this Wednesday night.
You know what? I just think it's all about the future. It's like what is the in week and a half, what does the future hold for the bowl game? What is the future going to be, heading to 2013? What is the future of the quarterback situation? How is recruiting going to turn out, in the long run for Trent Johnson? Can the baseball team, continue on this path of success that they're on? But it's just like, it seems like everything's trending in the right direction. Everything seems to be going well, outside the few little mishaps, earlier this year. But, I think everything's going good for TCU. I think, to me, it's one of the hottest schools in the country, and, by far one of the hottest in Texas, behind probably Texas A&M. You have to give them their credit. So, I'm really optimistic about everything going on, with the school, with the university, with athletics, and right now I'm looking forward to the bowl game, but I am disappointed that football season is coming to an end. But, that's how it goes. 2013 season will be here before we know it.
Jamie, over to you. Your final thoughts here tonight.
Same thing as Trey. Just looking forward to the young football team, how they perform in the bowl against Michigan State. Looking forward to 2013 and all that it brings. Looking forward to the new guys that are going to come in and hopefully dominate right out of the gate for the men's basketball team as well. But just in closing, I just think that every Frog fan at this point needs to be very thankful that our athletic department is in the situation that it's in. When you look at other schools, specifically Texas, where they want their football coach to go away, they've lost their offensive coordinator. Their defensive coordinator was considering taking the job at Florida International for a while. They want their basketball coach gone as well. Their baseball team has been underperforming the last few seasons. It's just I think every Frog fan at this point, despite the things that have gone on earlier in this year, need to be pretty thankful for the position that we're in, and a lot of that credit has to go to Chris Del Conte. The guy has done a fantastic job handling everything, juggling all of those sports at one time, and it's interesting to think that 3 years ago we were all excited to have CDC here because he was a good fundraiser, and he's clearly much more than that.
It's funny. We could probably talk another 20 minutes about how we can't sleep at night about Gary Patterson leaving, but the true nightmare is who is going to take Chris Del Conte away from TCU, right? And I know that everyone talks about the house and he's happy and the kids and whatever, but you'd have to think eventually that guy's going to move on to bigger and better things, and I literally can't even think about that possibility, but. we've got him for now, and we got to cherish him while he's here. Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Frogs War podcast. We've gone pretty long, about an hour and a half almost. It's been covered a lot of good topics. Keep your eyes on Frogs of War over the next week. Michigan State coming up, obviously. Basketball coverage ramps up here as we head into Big 12 play, and we get to play teams like Kansas, which is both going to be awesome and horrible. And baseball coverage obviously will start in January as guys come back. Practice starts. First game for baseball into February, right around my birthday weekend. I cannot wait. It's going to be a tremendous amount of fun. And we'll be back on the podcast before then to go ahead and talk a little bit more about TCU sports. But for now, for Mr. Trey Fallon, Mr. Jamie Plunkett, I am Patrick McCullough signing off. We'll see you next time.